All right, we are back with another One of None podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Dr. Jonah Casella.
And I'm your other host, Dr. Andrew Ganong.
Thought you weren't going to answer for a hot second there. Just leave me hanging.
Why? I was gonna leave you on red.
Yeah, leave me on red, yeah. All right, today we're back talking about the Iron Mindset series that we're doing. This is part 2 of the Iron Mindset. And today we're going to title this and talk about walking the walk. And
Yep.
we're going to kind of skip. There's really a part between developing your why and then actually walking the walk, as we're going to call it. But we've already discussed it a lot, and that's the whole planning process. So in one of our last few podcasts, we've talked about the importance of planning in order to achieve a goal and part of being successful. And, we talked a whole podcast about it, so we're not going to reiterate like the entire thing. We'll touch on it a little bit, but basically once you develop this why, the reason that you want to do what you want to do, you have to then figure out, how am I going to do it? Right. So that's like the planning process. And so I'm going to like hit you real quick with a question, Drew, and we don't have to spend a lot of time on it, but just to kind of recap a little bit, whenever you are developing, your why, or you're developing a new goal that you're going to do, like 75 hard, we've talked about, you're doing that now. What was your planning process like? Like, what was the next step that you took in order to then begin to do this goal?
Well, I thought to myself, I don't want to do this over again, and I don't want to have to fail and start over. So that was kind of the first thing. And I hate to say that I went about it in a really smart way, because I think there's a trial and error piece to it. Like, the failure piece tells you a lot. We've talked about failure before and how that serves so much in the success process for yourself. If you just had a bunch of successes, you wouldn't really learn much. I think failure is the best teacher. So I did have some times where I was chugging water at like 10 p.m. and I made the mistake, or I had a workout that I could not get to because I didn't plan it accordingly. And that's what told me, okay, I need to start to be very detail oriented in how I plan everything out. And um, that's being looking into the future and saying, like, what do I have going on? It's being very keen on knowing what you have to do too. So we've talked about that before, is like using calendars, or using, a planner to help you understand what your schedule is looking like. That way you can plan accordingly. Because, like, if you fail to prepare, you're preparing to fail. And I haven't failed yet. I'm 23 days in. But to answer your question, I think short answer is, you have to be very good at looking ahead at what you have to do, and then making this an utmost priority, saying this is a non-negotiable for me, and knowing it's a non-negotiable, how am I going to fit this into my routine? Because you can do it. I mean, I I don't like the fact that I did this, but on Monday I worked 13 and a half hours. Not proud of that, but I was able to wake up at 4:30 on Monday, get what I had to do done, which was go to the gym for my first workout. There has to be 3 hours in between workouts. And then I was able to hit a workout at the end of the day. And that set me up for success. Otherwise, I would have failed it, because you have to have 3 hours in between. So it's knowing what you have. I mean, you always have time for it, and saying this is a non-negotiable
Yeah.
is my best answer.
Yeah, that's perfect. And I actually like that you didn't just like skip the fact that you kind of like botched it at first and didn't quite plan it well. I like that you
Yeah.
actually were like honest and human about it, which is good. Because that's, no matter who you are, I don't care if you're like the most successful person in the world, you're gonna go through a trial and error phase, at least at the beginning of any new thing that you're trying to accomplish or that you're figuring out. So yeah.
Yeah. It's
Um yeah, were you
I
gonna
was
say
gonna
something?
just I was just gonna say, it's like, reminds me of what I'm saying for your bachelor, or not for your bachelor, for being a groomsman in your wedding. I'm like, the saying that I said for it. It's like, I'm perfect. I do nothing wrong
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah.
It's like, no, I'm not perfect. I screw up a lot. I make tons of mistakes, and I fail a billion times in a row. But anyways, go ahead.
Yeah. So you have to have a well thought out plan going into each day, and every day is going to be different, obviously. So you have to figure it out ahead of time. That's the planning part, like we talked about before. You should definitely go listen to that podcast. It's a banger. Is the most important part. Banger. Okay, so now jumping into this week, we're talking about walking the walk, right? So you can talk a big game, but unless you walk the walk, it doesn't mean shit.
Yeah.
So, for instance, last time that we did the podcast, or maybe the time before, actually, it was maybe the time before, I talked about doing 10-mile days on my long runs, which I did for my long runs, 10-mile days. I prioritized that over a couple other really important things like my relationship. And so backing off of that a little bit, doing 1 hour runs, which put me around 7 miles when I do my longer days during the week. But still, you got to walk the walk. If you're going to talk about it, you got to be about it. And so that's going to be the next step that unlocks this iron mindset. And basically what I'm referring to now is when you start to step into this next phase where you planned it out and now you're going through the plan, right? So I'm going to use Andrew as an example. He plans out each day. So he's like, all right, I got to get up at 4:30, 4:45 to get my walk in or get my first workout in of the day. Okay. And then I'm going to work all day. I'm going to come home, immediately do my second workout of the day and whatever else. Okay. So that's all great. And you can talk that for sure. You can plan that all out. But when that alarm clock goes off at 4:30 in the morning, are you gonna hit snooze and immediately just give in to that little voice in your head that's like, I'm so comfortable right now. Just 5 more
So easy,
minutes.
dude.
Yeah. Or are you gonna be like, all right,
So
it's a
easy.
non-negotiable. I gotta do this, I gotta get up. And each little win that you do, each time that you like, all right, this sucks, but I planned it out, I'm gonna do it. It's just it gives you a little bit of energy, a little bit more mental toughness, hardens you up a little bit more, and then those little tidbits over time, iron sharpens iron, and in no time you're gonna have a lot of confidence and gonna get that iron mindset. So, Drew, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that, or in
No, dude,
general.
I think that's great. I mean, like, how often do we see people saying they're going to do something and never do it? So, first off, kudos to you, Jonah, because I never told you that. You did say you were going to do that. So, good job, because I know it can get hard. Like, the worst thing, it's like eating, or it's like going grocery shopping when you're hungry. Like, you're biting off more than you can chew. And in the moment, you're like, oh, yeah, I'm definitely going to wake up at 4:30 tomorrow. And then the alarm clock hits and you didn't go to bed at the right time and you're real tired and your bed feels so comfortable. So kudos to you for doing that. And now that I think about it, I did say within the first couple podcasts I'd stop using my phone as much and I deleted my social media. So I'm kind of proud of that too. But
Good shit.
yeah, nonetheless, yeah. I mean, how many times do we see people in our generation saying, "Yeah, I'm gonna do this, or I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna start this. I'm gonna start working out a lot. I'm gonna get shredded. I'm gonna do." Some people, are committing to these big things and then they fall short, or they try it for a couple days and they give up. And what does that say about your commitment to yourself? I mean, like that's of utmost importance, is looking at that and saying, like, I care enough about myself and putting all of my chips into myself so that I can bet on myself every single time. And like, if you can't do that, like, you need to start building that self discipline and the ability to really invest in yourself. And it's not it's not selfish to do that either. And that's something that it's a tough pill for us to swallow right now, Jonah, because as we're committing to doing these things, staying consistent with the pod, trying to maintain things at work and good practice at work, and juggle all of these different priorities in our life, it's really easy for us to say, I don't need to execute right now. Like, I can put this off for another time. And you're gonna have to, amidst the controversy of maintaining relationships and the work life balance, that's all gonna get very difficult. And sometimes it's gonna seem like you're being very selfish, and you're gonna have to have real conversations with people and adjust. And that's okay. It's not selfish to prioritize your health and your wellness and your growth, but it's selfish to only think about yourself and not the other people. And I know that Jonah is kind of calculating right now about some relationships in his life. Same with me. I think that we tend to get very selfish, and there is a fine line of doing it. But I mean, committing to yourself is crazy important in your growth. And if you just continue to remain stagnant, like that's not helping anything. And you have to think about ahead. Like I talk about with my planning, even on the, when it comes to most day-to-day tasks, you have to think ahead to plan everything out. You should have the oversight and the bird's eye view to see 5 years in advance too. Say, where do I want to be in 5 years? Am I working on everything I need to now to be able to get to where I want to be in 5 years? And if that answer is not, you know, I know exactly what I'm doing is helping, then you need to start to readjust, I think, and prioritize things.
Yeah, definitely. And like you said, you have to commit to whatever that is. And you
Yep.
have to, I think another thing that's really important to this mindset um, is having just, and I think I mentioned it before, so I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, but having this 110% belief in what you're doing, in yourself. Um, if you don't have that complete commitment and belief that you can accomplish it, and you're already starting at a disadvantage. I know I've talked about this before, but you're already starting at a disadvantage, right? Like if I'm like, I'm gonna run 15 miles this weekend, and like I'm saying it on the podcast, right? And then in my mind, I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I could actually do that, but I'm just gonna say that, and I'm just gonna do my best, but I'm not too sure if I can do it. It's like, no, you have to, even if like it's uncertain if you can because you've never done this before, you have to just be like all in. Yep, I got this. I know I can do it. Of course, it's not just blind hope. There comes the planning part and executing the prep that leads to something like that or other big goals too. But you have to have that like full commitment to it.
Yeah.
Um,
I agree with that. I
yeah,
like that a lot. That reminded me of like Saturday morning. I was not getting enough sleep throughout the week, and then I went to bed so late because I was late to do my reading and my workout on Friday, and then 4:30 or 4:15 came around on Saturday morning. It's like, who wants to get up at this time to go run? And I
not
was
me.
just like, this is miserable. But it's it's like weird because I was thinking about this recently. 75 hard, like it's this arbitrary contest with yourself. And like, why am I so committed when I have 75 hard on my radar, but I can't convince myself to go work out consecutively 7 days without 75 hard? Like it's just like this like arbitrary challenge that someone made up, which is great, don't get me wrong. But why am I so committed to something that is just like a made up contest, but when it comes to like my daily actions, it's hard for me to stay consistent without the challenge. So that begs the question is like why are you not holding yourself to the same standard and executing even without a challenge? And that's a question I've been reflecting on. And Jonah, maybe that's something that you need to ponder too, because this is going to be a really good time for you when you enter 75 hard. You're going to just be dialed because if you can stay so consistent without a challenge, imagine what you're going to be like with a challenge.
Yeah, no,
So
that's very true. Yeah. I actually thought about this the other day and I thought you were going a different way with that for a split second. I thought you were going to be like, why am I doing this why am I torturing myself with this arbitrary challenge that,
yeah, I would say something like that.
that but I was thinking about that the other day actually. I was just thinking like, why it was probably when I was running 10 miles or something. I was like, why am I doing this to
Yeah.
myself? What's the purpose? I don't have a race coming up. Like I'm not necessarily prepping for some big like race or anything like that. But at the end of the day, it's just I like to think about it as I just want to be ready. Like that's maybe that's like the little thing that I hold on to as to why I like try and stay so diligent during the week is like I just want to be ready. Like when it does come time where I'm gonna start prepping again for a big race, like a big workup for a race, like I'm gonna be one step further because I've just been keeping so consistent with everything. And so I think that's what I've been holding on to.
Yeah, I mean that's
Um,
great too. I mean you've been super consistent. And I think I think our generation honestly kind of holds those who actually ho- they hold those people that hold the line and say or do what they say they're going to do to like a very high standard, and they're held to like this pedestal almost, which is crazy. I don't know if it's the lack of consistency that our generation sees, but when you see someone like that, that committed to what they said they were going to do, and then they do it, they're like, oh my gosh, wow, I admire you for what you're doing. It's like, brother, I'm just doing what I said I was going to do. Like it's nothing. It's not, I have some crazy, like I come from some family that has a genetic ability to like somehow do this thing. I'm an average dude. I'm just doing what I said I'm going to do, and I'm holding myself to it.
Yeah.
And
And why
so
is
I think, and it's cool. Like when someone does do that, I look up to someone like that because I want to be that way too. And I think maybe that's partly I used to hold others to a higher standard whenever I would see them do something like that. But, you know, I think it's like people automatically assume, let's say they see someone go to med school and you view that person as like, wow, you're such a smart individual. Or Jonah, in your case, man, it's crazy that you're a doctor, but you were always smarter than everyone else. You're like, no, I just I did what I said I was going to do, and that's it. And you're holding me to the standard that I'm some god, but I'm not. Or I had some genetic predisposition that set me apart from others for some reason. That's not the case. I just said, I did what I said I was going to do. And that's what's wrong right now is it's like you're an uncommon human being because you say that or you do what you say you're going to do. When in reality, everyone should be doing this. It's just nobody can have the diligence and the self-discipline and the mastery to do it themselves. So executing is everything. And, people talk about the lifestyles they want. I just talked to somebody about this recently. You claim you want this lifestyle. You say that you're going to have this big mansion one day and you're going to drive this sick car and you're going to be able to have the business you want. You're not going to get it with that lifestyle you're living because you can't even commit to yourself for 20 days, let alone, multiple years. What do you think you're going to get out of that?
Yeah.
So executing is everything, right?
Oh, it
Just
is
as,
absolutely everything.
yeah,
And I mean, like, that reminded me of, like, well, first of all, anybody that's um done anything that takes a number of years, right? Where you've planned something out and then it's taken you, even if it's like an associate's degree, like that's 2 years that you've spent planning and then ultimately committing to and accomplishing, right? And then obviously you want to go into like, med school, surgeons, like you're talking about 13, 14 years of your life. Like you talk about a commitment, 13 years of your life to just get to the career, to just start your career. Like that's a commitment. So yeah, like why is it so hard for you to commit to, changing your eating habits? Start out with, a couple weeks and then a month and so on and so forth, right? Like I don't understand that. And also to add to your point too, why is it so crazy that when people do accomplish what they said they were going to do, why is that such a crazy thing?
yeah.
It's because nobody's doing it. Nobody, like you said, is sticking to what they said they were going to do. It's like in college, right? Or any gym. It doesn't even matter if you're in school. January 1st hits, that gym is packed for 2 weeks and then it's dead. Like it goes back to normal, how it was before. In college, every single year, you dreaded January 1st as people that were going to the gym all the time. It was packed. You can't get a machine. And after the first year there, we were like, it'll be 2 weeks and then it'll go back to normal because nobody can stick to anything that they
Every
say they were
time.
going to stick to. So yeah, I'm with you on that. And the other thing I want people to think about too, and I was listening to Nick Bear's podcast because he's talking about he's prepping for the California International Marathon.
He's
CIM.
trying to, before you continue, he's trying to run that like 2:45 or something, isn't he?
Yeah, he's trying to break 2:45
It's crazy.
hour marathon pace, which puts him at between 6 minute and 6:15 minute mile pace for the whole marathon. And so he was talking about this and he was saying, those are the paces that he has to run. He said 3 years ago when I forget how many hours it took him, but he was running 6:45 was his average minute per mile pace for the marathon that he ran 3 years ago. It took him 3 years. And if you follow him of running almost every day, like 3 to 4 days, most times 5 days a week, this guy's training. It took him 3 years to shave off 15 seconds, 15, 20 seconds off his time per mile. you talk about commitment when you're like, that's commitment. 3 years to shave off 15, 20 seconds, even if it's 30 seconds. Like that's what it's about right there.
Yeah.
So if you can't stay committed for, a month, 2 months, then we got to figure something out for you. I guess that's why. I mean, we're talking about this stuff too. And that's not. I'm not saying that like I'm not dogging on anybody that's at that point. We were all there. Like that's you got to start somewhere. So like I'm not ripping on anybody by any means because we're all human, but you get the point we're making, obviously.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's just so nowadays it's just so cliche when people say they're going to do something. I'm like, okay, nice. That's cool. And then I'll circle back with you in a month and see where you're at, It's like
Yeah,
you just
exactly.
you have to take it with a grain of salt sometimes and understand that, people are going to they're going to continue to do it over and over and over again. And let's play the other side of it, I know, and I'm finishing Goggins' second book, which I was like halfway through and stopped reading, but he always talks about, he said before about like at his gravesite he envisions himself and all the things that he didn't do or the things he didn't accomplish. And I think to myself too, like what happens when you're 65 or 70 and you look back and you said, well, God, I had all these things that I was supposed to be a really successful person in my field, but something happened and I just kind of didn't let it happen. Like, is that what you're going to reflect on? Like wasting all that time doing what though? Say just making a justification for your actions, saying, I wanted to have fun and I wanted to enjoy my teens and I want to enjoy my 20s and my 30s. And then by the time you realize you've just been coasting your whole entire life and not committing to anything and executing on things you said you were going to do. And then you're left with like this, well, I was supposed to. Well, okay, you were supposed to, but I don't care about that. I don't care about what you were supposed to do. I care about if you did it. That's what's impressive. That's like me saying, I'm going to open up a multi-million-dollar practice one day. And then 20 years from now, I said, oh, yeah, I was supposed to do that, but then I didn't end up doing it instead. It's like nobody cares about that. Like I just forget about it. It goes in one ear and out the other. So I think that you have to have the oversight of like, where do I want to be in the next 10 years, 5 years, week, month, day, whatever you want to call it. And you have to think about the daily actions that are going to, get you there. And it's going to be consistent execution. And that's walking the walk. The walking the walk is not just the completion of the task, it's everything leading up to it. Maybe I have a half marathon I'm going to be running in Jacksonville. That is going to be cool to say I did it. But what's going to matter is the walking the walk every day leading up to it too. It's not just the completion of the task at the end of the race. It's the consistency throughout the training to do that and get to where I want to. So don't get bogged down by the finish line either. I stay deep in like the routines, the mundane things, the training. That's the fun part, because then you look back on that. You don't look back on the race. You've probably done it enough times before the race, but the race is just the end goal, So
Yeah, 100% agree with that. Walking the walk is the decision to get up in the morning and get your work in out before work because you have something else going on, or because you have this diehard dream to run a half marathon or to run a full marathon or whatever it is. But you also have a family and you also have other priorities. So walking the walk is getting up in the morning and getting it done before everybody else gets up. So then you can prioritize other things later on. It's the decision to not eat, poorly during the week. And, we're not talking about like, I'm not as good at my diet as Andrew is, but that doesn't mean that I don't make the decisions to eat clean most of the time. 80-20. That's my rule. It's the decision to make the hard right. And like it's those little individual daily choices that you make. That's walking the walk. It's like Andrew said, it's not what people see whenever you post the picture with your medal at the end of the race that you just did. It's the months leading up to that where you were grinding and you're battling injury and you're trying to just stay in it mentally when you're really down and you're thinking, why the hell am I torturing myself with this? What do I have to prove? Who am I proving like this to? And the answer is nobody but yourself. And you got to walk that walk every day. And that's the only way that you're going to compound things over time and then eventually, get to that end goal. And I made this example before. Graduating was always the end goal. And for the longest time, I pictured walking on the stage and becoming officially a doctor, right? And honestly, it was exciting, but it wasn't all that I thought it was going to be, because all I thought about, the best memories that I had were all the times leading up to that, when we were in undergrad in the library getting it, or I was in grad school getting it. In those dark moments, that's what I thought about, and that's what I rejoice on. The walking across the stage part and getting the big piece of paper meant nothing compared to that. So that's what walking the walk means.
Let's go, dude. That hyped me up. Tip of the iceberg. Tip of the iceberg. It's they only see the 1% or the 10%. They don't see the 90% of the work that was put in. And that's what executing is. That's what walking the walk is. It's staying deep in the routines and committing to yourself every single minute of every day, not just the end goal and walking across that stage or walking across or running across the finish line, holding up that medal. It's the daily grind. So Jonah's right. I think that wraps it up, man. You did that seamlessly. So great job on that. The second part of the Iron Mind series, Walking the Walk. We hope y'all enjoyed the podcast. This is a bread and butter of it all. This is what's going to make you unstoppable. And it's not even, the barriers aren't anyone but yourself. And that's the idea behind the Iron Mind. It's your own mind. It's not anybody else. It's not the circumstance. It's not the environment you're in. It's not the people, the family you were born into or anything like that. It was just the mind, and hardening and callousing the mind to create a lifestyle and, self-discipline and mastery that will get you to the next level. So thanks for listening. Appreciate you always. Don't forget to follow us on social media, Spotify, podcast, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, the whole shebang. Jonah, I don't know if you have anything else you want to say, but
I'm good. We'll see you next time.
All right, guys. Peace.
Peace.